We're also following a developing story out of Afghanistan this hour. The country has been shaken by another earthquake today, less than 48 hours after a tremor left a trail of death and destruction. The Taliban now says the number of dead from Sunday's quake has topped 1,400, with more than 3,000 other people injured. And there are fears those totals will only grow as rescue crews reach remote communities. For more reaction, let's bring in Lauryn Oates. She is the executive director of Right to Learn Afghanistan. That's a Canadian charity that works to ensure the right to education for Afghan women and girls. And thank you, Lauryn, for being there. Thank you.
Thanks.
So you've experienced earthquakes firsthand while visiting Afghanistan. What went through your mind when you heard the news?
The first thing was, it was already a pretty tough week for girls and women, with it being back to school and most of them being unable to return to school. And then this tragedy on top of that has just left people absolutely reeling. So the first reaction was just to want to make sure everybody was safe. So we were checking in with participants and students in our programs and just trying to account for everyone and make sure no one was affected. And no one was. And in fact, that's because the area where the earthquake hit the worst is extremely remote and hard to reach for schooling programs and other forms of assistance.
Well, that is some good news there, in that respect. You've also said that gender plays a role in this disaster. What do you mean by that?
Well, in another recent devastating earthquake, which took place in 2023, women were disproportionately counted among the dead and injured for a variety of reasons. But one of them is because of the restrictions in place on women under the Taliban's gender apartheid system. You simply have more women and girls who are at home. They're, within the four walls of their homes, and often the homes collapsed. And the other reason is, again, because of the restrictions, that's driven a lot of men to leave the country and work abroad, primarily in Iran. That earthquake took place in Herat, the province that neighbors Iran. And so a lot of men were away working, and there was no one around to, try to get the women outside and to support them. And then you have the restrictions on women healthcare workers and women aid workers who are needed to actually support the women injured and who need medical assistance from the earthquake. So these are just some of the ways in which the discriminatory policies make it so much worse for women and girls. And we're certainly going to see more earthquakes in the future. And this is going to continue unless those underlying policies are addressed.
That is interesting. I had not thought of that. From what you're hearing, what are the most urgent needs on the ground right now, both in terms of immediate supports and long-term recovery?
The most immediate need is simply to try to get to the site and to rescue people who are trapped underneath rubble. In this area, most people live in mud houses. It's a very poverty-stricken area, and those houses easily collapsed. And there's still people who are alive who are trapped and who need to be rescued. The earthquake happened on Sunday. It's now Tuesday. So every moment that goes by, there's less and less chance that people will make it out. So the first need is really just to try to get rescue assistance. And then after that, there'll be need for rebuilding support. Again, this is a really poor area. They're going to need lots of support with finding homes for people and rebuilding institutions, ongoing medical care, psychological needs, and a lot more. But more than anything, beyond humanitarian assistance, we really have to just address those underlying conditions that make situations like this so much more deadly for women and girls. It is a natural disaster, so it looks not political on the surface, but it has a political dimension to it because women are impacted in such a more extreme way because of the gender apartheid situation in the country.
Looking ahead, Lauryn, what would you like to see the Canadian government do to step up and help?
We know that the UN is on the ground. UN Women is working with their partners trying to assess the situation, and direct aid to people will be really, really important to reach them and support that rebuilding. But it's equally important that Canada continue to affirm non-recognition of the Taliban and seek to hold them accountable for their actions because of the terrible impact situations like this have on women and girls as a result of gender apartheid. So we want to see things like additional sanctions coming from Canada on the Taliban, specifically not on the people of Afghanistan, but on the Taliban, to promote more accountability about the situation there, and other actions like the inclusion of gender apartheid as a crime against humanity in the draft Crimes Against Humanity Convention that's before the United Nations. So these seem like they're not connected, but they are ways to mitigate the impact of the discriminatory human rights abuses and restrictions that are in place. And I think Canada has a really important role to play in that respect.
Lauren, good to talk to you. Thank you. Lauryn Oates, Executive Director of Right to Learn Afghanistan.